Bonjour et bienvenue à notre rendez-vous quotidien pour la presse, en ligne et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le lundi 28 juin et je suis heureux d'être de retour ici en salle de presse parmi vous. Puisque nous n'avons pas eu de conférence de presse vendredi en raison du Conseil européen, permettez-moi de commencer avec l'agenda de la présidente von der Leyen pour cette semaine. Aujourd'hui, la présidente sera en déplacement à Francfort, où elle prononcera une laudatio en honneur de Werner Hoyer, président de la Banque européenne d'investissement, qui se voit décerner le prix de banquier européen de l'année par une association de médias. Demain, la présidente von der Leyen s'adressera par visioconférence aux participants du Forum économique de Bruxelles. Mercredi matin, elle présidera la réunion du Collège des commissaires. Ce même jour, dans l'après-midi, la présidente participera au forum Génération Égalité, co-organisé par ONU Femmes et les gouvernements de la France et du Mexique. Plus tard, elle recevra ici, au Berlaymont, le Premier ministre de l'Irak, M. Mustafa Al-Kadhimi. Puis, jeudi, la présidente et l'ensemble du collège se rendront à Ljubljana, à l'occasion du début de la présidence slovène du Conseil de l'Union. Le même jour, elle présentera l'évaluation de la Commission du plan national de reprise de la Slovénie. Et elle fera de même le vendredi à Vilnius, en Lituanie. J'appelle maintenant Christian à me rejoindre sur le podium pour une annonce sur nos relations avec le Royaume-Uni.
Thank you, Eric. The European Commission has today adopted two adequacy decisions for the United Kingdom, one under the General Data Protection Regulation and one under the Law Enforcement Directive. Personal data can now flow freely from the European Union to the United Kingdom, where it benefits from an essentially equivalent level of protection to that guaranteed under EU law. The UK's data protection system continues to be based on the same rules that were applicable when the UK was a member state of the EU. Both adequacy findings, of course, include strong safeguards, such as a sunset clause for the first time in an adequacy decision, which limits the duration of adequacy to 4 years. Following the green light from member states representatives, the adoption of the Commission today is the last step in the procedure. The two adequacy decisions enter into force today.
Thank you very much, Christian. Now I will call Dan for an announcement on new VAT rules across Europe.
Yes, thanks very much, Eric. I hope you can hear me and I hope you can see me. Indeed, this Thursday, the 1st of July, new VAT rules for online shopping will enter into force. Now, these rules are part of the EU's overall efforts to ensure a more level playing field when it comes to our businesses, to simplify cross-border e-commerce, and to introduce greater transparency for EU shoppers when it comes to pricing and consumer choice. These new rules will affect online sellers, marketplaces, platforms, both inside and outside the European Union. It will also affect postal operators, couriers, customs and tax administrations, as well as, very importantly, consumers. We are organising a technical briefing today at 3 o'clock, so if you're interested in this, please do tune in, and we also have a press release available for you online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Puis, permettez-moi de vous rappeler qu'une réunion des ministres de l'Agriculture et de la Pêche est en cours en ce moment. Les commissaires Janusz Wojciechowski, Stella Kyriakides et Virginijus Sinkevičius y représentent la Commission. Les ministres discuteront de la réforme de la politique agricole commune. Dans le domaine maritime, la Commission présentera la communication sur une pêche plus durable dans l'Union européenne, adoptée par le Collège le 9 juin. Les ministres discuteront aussi de la protection des abeilles par rapport aux pesticides, selon les lignes directrices proposées par l'Autorité européenne de sécurité des aliments. Il y a 2 conférences de presse planifiées. La première aura lieu aujourd'hui aux alentours de 17h20 avec la participation du commissaire Sinkevičius, et la deuxième aura lieu en fin de journée et le commissaire Wojciechowski y sera présent. Merci donc de garder vos questions sur ces sujets pour les commissaires lors de ces conférences de presse. Puis, je vous rappelle aussi qu'après ce rendez-vous de midi, nous aurons en salle de presse le vice-président exécutif Valdis Dombrovskis et le commissaire Nicolas Schmit qui présenteront le cadre stratégique de l'Union européenne en matière de santé et de sécurité au travail pour la période 2021-2027. Et à 15h, comme mentionné auparavant par Dan, nous organisons un briefing technique sur les nouvelles règles relatives à la taxe sur la valeur ajoutée applicable au commerce en ligne. Now, to end this series of announcements, I would like to say farewell to our dear colleague Verena Schmidt-Roschmann. Verena, you have been the DPA Bureau Chief in Brussels here since 2016, so for 5 years. I got to know you right at the beginning of my tenure here in the SPP when you invited me to your offices across the road to meet the team. It's less than 2 years ago, but it already feels like half a lifetime as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure that for you, these 5 years have also been very, very intense, so a change of perspective will certainly be very welcome. You are now moving on to the DPA headquarters as special correspondent for Berlin and Eastern Germany, as I understand. And I would like to thank you in my name and in the name of the whole SPP for excellent cooperation, which has always been both demanding and very cordial, as it should be. I wish you best of luck in your new post. Don't forget us. Brussels is never far away, and as you know, many people come back, so this is only an Auf Wiedersehen, certainly not an adieu. Let me welcome as well Ansgar Hase in his new role as Bureau Chief as of the 1st of August. Now remember, Ansgar, August is a sacred month here in Brussels, so take it easy the first weeks of your new tenure. That concludes our statements for today, and we will now move to your questions. And I pass the floor to Adam.
A very good morning, good afternoon to you, Eric. I wonder, as we head towards the summer holiday season, as you just mentioned there will be a lot of people in the United Kingdom who would love to have some clarity about where in the EU they can make a holiday. Do you think we are anywhere near having an EU-wide system to give real clarity about who can go where, when with what requirements?
Thank you. This would be a question first for Adalbert and then perhaps for Christian.
Thank you very much, Adam. I hope you can hear me okay. So regarding the restriction on non-essential travel from outside the EU, there is a Council recommendation in place which very clearly outlines what member states should be doing in relation to allowing entry into the EU for travellers from the outside. The situation that applies to the United Kingdom at present is that travellers who are vaccinated, who are fully vaccinated, or who have an essential reason to come to the EU should be allowed by member states to arrive into the EU. It so happens that this is something that the Council keeps under constant review, and there are discussions every 2 weeks in different Council structures to assess what, if any, changes need to be made to this recommendation. And I can also add that from the Commission side, we of course expect member states to apply this recommendation fully. When it comes to the provision of information, what we have done in the Commission is we put in place a website called Reopen EU, where we put all the information that we receive from member states as regards different travel restrictions that are in place. And we will, of course, continue to do so.
Christian, do you want to add some
Yes,
elements?
and if I maybe can add on the internal side, in the European Union, I mean, let me remind you, of course, of our EU Digital COVID Certificate, which will be the key tool for allowing safe traveling this summer, and which is well on track with more and more member states connecting to the system. We will have the regulation entering into force on the 1st of July, so later this week. And as of then, we will have also binding rules in place for all member states, but I think we also see convergence in that direction by many member states when it comes to the conditions for traveling and easing travel restrictions in a safe and responsible way, of course. And then we, of course, also have the recommendation in place on free movement, which was adopted by the Council mid-June. And so the Commission's position is that we can be confident now that with the updated recommendation and with the certificate, the conditions are there for Europeans to enjoy a safe summer holiday with hopefully limited travel restrictions. Recommendation is very clear that fully vaccinated and recovered citizens should be exempted from travel-related restrictions. It also clarifies the rules, as you will remember, for families, ensuring family unity and exempting children from certain requirements. And at the same time, of course, it includes an emergency break, which is important in the context, of course, of possible new variants that we're also seeing or could be seeing in the future again, to be able to react swiftly to any developments in that sense.
Thank you, Christian. Are there other comments or questions, rather, sorry, on this issue of traveling within the EU this summer? Please only keep your hand raised if your question is on this. Hans, you have a question on this.
Yes, hello, Eric. I've actually got a bunch of questions, but one of it concerns actually the travel from outside into the EU, and it's concerning the vaccines handed out by the COVAX program, because as I understand, a large part of those vaccines are AstraZeneca jabs produced in India. And as I further understand, they are not approved by EMA. And so since the EU is basically a huge supporter of the COVAX program, and many countries in the world, or many citizens in many countries across the world are getting vaccinated with these jabs and then can't travel into the EU, I wonder whether this is not causing a sort of, a problem or an unfairness in a certain way. Of course, these vaccines need to be approved by the EMA, but I would like to know whether the Commission is in a way aware of this problem, does it have a comment on it, and also is raising it with EMA as to where there could be an approval for these vaccines given. Thank you.
Thank you. A question for Adalbert.
Thank you, Hans. So as you said yourself, there are two different possibilities that are mentioned in the Council recommendation. Member states should open non-essential travel to those who have been vaccinated with an EMA-approved vaccine, and they could do so. So they have explicitly the option to do so for people who have been vaccinated with a vaccine that received the WHO emergency authorization. Now, for the specific question that you're raising about the vaccines that are present in COVAX, I'm afraid I will have to check and get back to you.
Thank you very much. Let's continue on the issue. Yanis.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Yanis Palalos from Kathimerini. Two questions. A, is the Commission aware of this plan that has been reported, or this proposal, I should say, by Germany for a coordinated approach vis-à-vis third countries, which includes a ban on non-essential travel, of all non-essential travel from the UK? Is there a concern that if there isn't coordination on this, then there will be disruption in the intra-EU travel arrangements? And I ask in particular, given the announcements from Germany regarding Portugal, which go into effect tomorrow, about which I also wanted to ask, are they compatible with what is foreseen in the EU COVID certificate once it comes into force? Thanks.
So your first question, I think, is for Adalbert, and the second more for Christian. Adalbert.
Thank you very much. So first of all, regarding the announcements of the possible or the discussions on the possible application of the emergency brake, which is contained in the Council recommendation. This is in fact something that could be discussed by the Member States and the Commission representatives in the Council formation called IPCR, in fact, as we speak. So given that IPCR started this morning at 11 o'clock, I don't yet have update or live information as to what's being discussed in that meeting. So I would maybe suggest that we come back to it after that meeting has finished. And generally speaking, there are pretty clear rules in this Council recommendation as to what Member States should be doing. And when it comes to, as I said, UK travellers, the rule is that non-essential travel should be open to people who have been fully vaccinated and those who have an essential reason, not to other travellers. And from the Commission side, we very much expect Member States to fully apply that recommendation. However, it is not something that it is fully legally binding on the Member States, as would be a regulation or a directive, given that it is a Council recommendation.
Christian.
Yeah, what I can add from the internal side, you asked whether we are aware of this proposal from Germany. We are, in fact. We have been informed by the German authorities that they are planning to consider Portugal as a virus variant area. So this comes in the context of this emergency brake that is foreseen in that I've mentioned before in the Council recommendation. But I would say, as Adalbert says, let's have the discussion first at the expert level, and at the Council level I can just say that this is what we have been informed of at this stage, and of course that is important for us that the Council recommendation will continue to be the guiding compass for all Member States in this context, no matter what measures we are talking about.
Thank you. Are there other questions on this issue? Olena.
Yes, I just have a little follow-up for Adalbert regarding this Indian vaccine. So as far as I understand, before this question wasn't raised, and you don't know right now if this Indian AstraZeneca is going to be sufficient to enter to EU for third country nationals or not. So this is my question. Did I understand right? Right now you don't have this information. Yes?
Adalbert.
That is entirely correct. I will have to check this point and come back to you. So if you're also interested in this information, I'm very happy to include you in our reply to Hans.
Okay, thank you. I see no further questions on this issue, and therefore I move to Mose.
This is a related question, if you hear me, about the recognition of vaccines for travel into the EU. It has to do with the vaccines developed by Russia and China, which have not been approved, I understand, by EMA or not even included on the WHO emergency list. And I wonder if there is some kind of loophole in the Council regulation, because it seems to allow, let's say, travelers from an EU member state which has approved these vaccines to travel into another member state, or is this up to that other member state? What is your reaction to that? Thank you.
Well,
Christian.
Well, I think you have very similar rules actually when you look at the EU digital COVID certificate. It is basically vaccines approved by EMA have to be accepted under the certificate if member states or for member states when lifting restrictions for travelers, and for other vaccines that might have been approved by certain member states and used in their national programs, it remains in the hands of the other member states to see whether they would want to accept such a vaccine when it is presented for traveling. So there's a very similar and aligned approach actually to what we have on the external side, with the big difference, of course, that for EU nationals, vaccines are not a precondition for vaccination, or even the EU digital COVID certificate is not a precondition for their right to free movement. This, of course, remains in place. But, of course, the certificate and vaccination or testing, etc., or recovery certificate would help to facilitate travel and be able to travel with less restrictions.
Thank you. Mose, I thought your question was on a completely different subject. I guess we'll come back to that later. Are there other questions for us on the issue of travel in the EU or from third countries into the EU? Please only keep your hand raised if this is the case. Stéphane.
Oui, bonjour. J'ai en fait deux questions. Je passe la deuxième est pour maintenant. La première, c'est concernant l'équivalence que la Suisse attend pour son certificat Corona. Est-ce que ça va venir prochainement, avant la saison des vacances? Est-ce que vous faites, comme certains disent, un lien aussi avec le problème autour de l'accord cadre? Si tu peux nous éclaircir là-dessus. Et la deuxième question concerne une autre équivalence par rapport à la protection des données, parce que tu as fait l'annonce sur la Grande-Bretagne. La Suisse attend aussi une décision pour l'équivalence sur la protection des données. Est-ce qu'on peut s'attendre là à une réponse bientôt aussi? Merci.
Bon, on va essayer de répondre aux deux questions, mais la deuxième n'est clairement pas en lien avec le sujet que nous discutons à l'heure actuelle. Mais sur l'app, où en est-on?
Alors, sur le certificat, tu sais que alors, en principe, ça c'est en cours. Il y a des travaux avec la Suisse qui ont progressé bien. Nous avons aussi reçu confirmation de la Suisse que techniquement c'est possible. Alors, tout est prêt techniquement pour l'interconnexion. Avant que la Commission puisse adopter l'acte Implementing Act de mise en œuvre, les États membres doivent aussi voter sur cet acte. C'est une procédure de comitologie. Alors nous pensons que c'est possible d'avoir cette décision adoptée prochainement. Oui.
Voilà, et donc pas de lien avec l'accord cadre.
Il n'y a pas de lien avec l'accord cadre, bien entendu. Et pour ta deuxième question, je peux peut-être un peu vite répondre. C'est assez simple, je n'ai pas de nouvelles sur ça. Nous avons discuté avant. La Commission va faire cette évaluation de toutes les décisions d'adéquation qui sont en place, y compris celle de la Suisse. Mais je n'ai pas un timing concret à annoncer à ce stade.
Merci. Yanis, once again on this.
Yes, sorry to come back, but I'm slightly confused by something I heard earlier about vaccines and intra-EU travel versus travel from third countries. Is it not the case that member states have are sort of allowed to accept non-approved vaccines when it comes to intra-EU travel, but when it comes to travel from third countries, it is strongly recommended that they not accept any vaccines which are not approved either by WHO or by EMA?
Adalbert.
About external travel, as I said, the Council recommendation says member states should accept those that have approval in the EU, and they could, so they have the option of accepting those that that have have completed WHO emergency listing process. So by elimination, it would seem to imply that member states are not recommended not to accept any other vaccines for the purpose of travel. That's what I can say about the external travel recommendation.
Thank you. So we continue on the issue. Athanasios.
Hi. There are two parts in my question. First of all, what happens if one country exceeds the scope of the recommendation and accepts right now actively vaccination certificates from non-WHO approved vaccines? And secondly, there is another issue with the interoperability of the EU vaccination certificate, COVID certificate. Did you know that if you have one dose of an EMA recommended vaccine in one country, one member state, and your second dose in another member state, those systems don't talk to each other, and no matter how hard you try, you will not get an EU COVID certificate, because one system, one country will recognize the first dose and the other will recognize the second as first again. And this is not rare. This is not something that happens not very frequently. From the 112 individuals that are connected right now, I can tell you that at least 2 have this problem. So it's a little less than 2% in our company right now. So what can be done about it? How can you make the systems become interoperable and solve this issue? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Where you see that real life is always even more complex than all the procedures and solutions we try to put in place. I don't think that we can provide you with an answer now, but I'm looking at Johannes because this is indeed about the technical side, I guess, as well, in terms of exchange of information between systems. Unless you have an answer that you can give now, but no, we will come back to you on that once we have looked into it. On your first question, I think it goes back to Adalbert again. Huh?
That's correct. I cannot tell you what happens. What I can say is that the approach that has been agreed by the Council and that is a recommendation to Member States is very clear. It was last updated on the 20th of May, and then afterwards there were revisions of one of the annexes. From our side, we urge Member States to swiftly implement this Council recommendation in a fully coordinated manner.
Christian.
Maybe if I can add just a few words on your second question, Athanasius. We are aware of this issue, and it has also been flagged to us, and we're for sure looking into this. But let's also not forget that the regulation is not yet in application, so there's still a few more days for member states to sort things out. And of course, the regulation is quite clear in the sense that all your vaccinations should be documented via the EU digital COVID certificate. So even if you have only received one, you have in principle the right to have this documented in your certificate. So the legal situation is very clear and should hopefully help to solve also bureaucratic hurdles soon.
Alexander, a question on this, travel within the EU or from outside the EU.
Decision. Hi, sorry, my question is on the adequacy decision actually.
Okay, we'll come back to that later. Thanks. Hamid. Oh, sorry, it's not on travel either. Okay, Griselda. Griselda, tu as la parole.
Oh là là.
C'est bon.
Merci. Oui, vous m'entendez?
Vas-y, oui. Vas-y, oui.
Merci beaucoup. Et excusez-moi si vous auriez déjà évoqué le sujet il y a un peu, mais j'ai eu des problèmes de connexion. Le certificat est un droit ou est une obligation? C'est-à-dire, on peut voyager avec une preuve d'un test antigène ou d'un test PCR qui vient d'être fait le matin même sans besoin du certificat, ou sans certificat, on ne peut pas monter à l'avion ou on ne peut pas passer une frontière. Merci.
C'est un droit, pas une obligation, mais je passe la parole à Christian de nouveau.
Exactement, c'est très clair, c'est un droit. Comme j'ai dit avant, tu as bien sûr le droit de libre circulation, comme tout citoyen européen. Et c'est aussi possible de documenter un test, par exemple, par un autre moyen. Mais bien entendu, l'avantage du certificat est que ça va être automatiquement accepté partout. Et par exemple, ce n'est pas nécessaire, comme souvent, d'avoir aussi une preuve d'un docteur ou des autres preuves. Alors, c'est un grand avantage, je pense, d'avoir le certificat. Et normalement, ça va aider et faciliter les choses.
Voilà, il ne faut pas oublier, c'est un outil qui a été mis en place pour faciliter le voyage à l'intérieur de l'Union européenne, notamment grâce à la standardisation que cela implique en termes d'informations qui sont présentées, de vérification de l'identité de la personne, etc., etc. Et donc, ça permet de résoudre un certain nombre de difficultés pratiques que l'on peut avoir lorsqu'on se promène avec des papiers qui sont à des formats différents, dans des langues différentes, etc., etc. Lorenzo.
J'ai deux questions. I'll pass to English. My first question concerns the free movement with Britain, which is not there anymore. But you mentioned the recommendation concerning external countries, third countries. But I remember that there were talks about the possibility to apply the COVID certificate also to Britain with an agreement, like with Switzerland. I know that Switzerland is in the Schengen space, but is there any possibility that a negotiation between Britain and the EU is successful concerning this COVID certificate? And another thing, how many countries are now connected with the COVID certificate, and which countries are not yet connected? Thanks.
Okay, on the first question, Christian. On the second, Johannes.
Yeah, on the UK, there are talks ongoing at the technical level, which are progressing well and going in the right direction. This is particularly because the technical system and the architecture of the EU and the UK are aligned. The talks are ongoing. I have no specific timeline to announce, but as you know, we have been open for working with our international partners from the very beginning and designed the whole system in such a way that this is possible. So it's good that the UK is now working with us towards that goal of achieving such an interoperable solution.
Johannes.
Yes, thank you, Lorenzo, for the opportunity to update you on the numbers. So we have 20 member states connected and issuing certificates. And I think rather than now going to all 20, I can mention the 7 that are not yet live. But once again, we have a website which is updated in real time. So for example, over the weekend, Slovenia and Slovakia joined, and this is updated since this morning. So you can also just go there and look it up yourselves. And in addition to the 20, you also have Iceland and Norway, but these are not member states, but European Economic Area countries. Now, on the countries that are not yet live, and I'm reading from the webpage, so it's Cyprus, Hungary, Ireland, Malta, the Netherlands, and Romania and Sweden.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Are there other questions for us on the issue of travel? That does not seem to be the case, so thank you very much. There was another question for Christian from Catherine. So we move To you, Catherine.
Hello, Christian. My question is about your announcement a moment ago about data adequacy and approval for the UK. I'm surprised by it. You said that, I think you've said that there's a sunset clause in that approval of 4 years, and yet we see that the UK had organised a task force on regulatory reform to seize the new opportunities from leaving the EU. And top of their list, or at least very near the top of their list, is ditching GDPR in favour of a UK framework for data protection. They describe GDPR as out of date, that it needs to be revised, that it goes against innovation, and that its provisions are unnecessary. So if this actually happened, would the EU have to wait to the end of this 4-year period, or could it sever that agreement beforehand? Thanks.
Yes. Look, we are, of course, very actively following all developments in the UK. This is part of the whole commitment of the adequacy here. First on the sunset clause, let me just remind that this is the first time that we are putting such a sunset clause in an adequacy decision. This is particularly a new safeguard that makes sure that that the UK stays aligned to our acquis to ensure an essentially adequate protection, and this would mean, of course, that after these 4 years, this will also have to go through the whole process again. That led to the adoption of the adequacy decision. So this makes it very clear and shows very clearly from the EU side that we are serious about, of course, the UK continuing to accept or to stay, on the same line with us on data protection. As for your question, whether if the UK at any point would decide to deviate from GDPR requirements, as for all other adequacy decisions, in case of any problematic developments that would negatively affect the level of protection of personal data, the Commission can decide at any point in time to suspend, to terminate, or to amend the decision. So this can be done immediately in case of justified urgency. So the sunset clause does not hinder this in any way.
Thank you, Christian. Very clear. Alexander, I think you had a question on the same issue.
Indeed, thank you. My question also concerns the adequacy decision, but more specifically the second decision on law enforcement. Here, the UK has been continuously criticized for the wide-ranging surveillance powers of its intelligence agencies. And you might recall there was an ECJ ruling only last year that said that these powers were excessive. I tried to look into the document quickly. I couldn't quite find references to that, so I wondered how the Commission considers that the current adequacy decision adequately protects European citizens from UK intelligence agencies' surveillance powers when courts such as the European Court of Justice and the European Court of Human Rights have consistently found those powers to be excessive.
Christian.
Yes, on national security access. So, as requested in particular by the case law of the Court of Justice, including the recent Schrems II judgment, we have carefully assessed the conditions and safeguards under which the UK law enforcement authorities or intelligence services can access data transferred from the EU. Our adequacy decision contains a detailed analysis of these aspects, including the most recent reforms of UK surveillance regimes that have significantly strengthened the applicable safeguards. The UK certainly has significant capabilities in the area of national security, as is also the case for some other EU member state, sorry. But the UK system also has a number of distinctive features and safeguards that were introduced, notably following judgments from the Strasbourg and Luxembourg courts. First, the collection of data by intelligence bodies is subject, in most cases, to requirement of prior authorization by an independent judicial body. Second, the collection of data for national security purposes is subject to strict conditions and safeguards. In particular, any measures need to be necessary and proportionate to the purpose it is intended to achieve. This necessity and proportionality check is part of the judicial prior authorization. And then third, in the UK system, challenges by individuals against the intelligence bodies for violation of fundamental rights can be brought before a specific court, the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. And last but not least, let me mention, you mentioned yourself, the European Court of Human Rights. So while the UK has left the EU and is no longer directly bound by EU data protection laws, it is still, of course, has to adhere to the European Convention of Human Rights and has submitted to the jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights and also to the Council of Europe's Convention 108, which is the only binding international treaty in the area of data protection. So here the UK remains, if you want, in the European privacy family, and so there is, this is also an important element to take into account.
Thank you. There are other questions on the issue of the adequacy decision. Hans.
Sorry, apologies. Not on the adequacy decision, but it's probably also for Christian. It is on the intra or cross-EU investment protection. I think that is for him, but is that right? No, it's not for him. Sorry,
no, it's not for him. It would be for Dan, I think. But let me see what else we have. I see no other further questions for Christian, so let me go to Tommaso, who had a question on vaccines.
Oui, bonjour. Merci pour m'avoir donné la parole. C'est une question sur les vaccins de Novavax, parce que j'ai lu que les vaccins de Novavax est très efficace contre les dernières variantes du coronavirus. Donc, vous aviez des négociations avec cette entreprise américaine, mais je voudrais vous demander une mise à jour de la négociation parce que nous avons perdu les contacts avec ces sujets-là. Merci.
Merci. Généralement, nous vous tenons au courant lorsqu'il y a des développements significatifs dans nos négociations avec une entreprise. Je passe la parole à Stéphane.
Merci beaucoup. Tu as tout à fait raison, Eric. La seule chose que je peux confirmer, c'est qu'il y a des négociations. Et si nous avons affranchi une nouvelle étape dans ces négociations, évidemment, nous vous tiendrons au courant. Mais à ce stade-ci, les négociations sont en cours. Merci.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour Stéphane sur les aspects vaccins ou santé? Ça n'est pas le cas. Et donc, Hans, nous revenons. We come back to your question.
Yes, thank you. So for Dan then, well, the Corporate Observatory Europe published a paper today saying that the Commission is preparing a proposal on intra-EU investment protection, and that is this coming in this autumn, and that one of the options apparently considered in a non-paper from September last year is to build up an intra-EU investment court. So my two questions would be, first of all, can you confirm that such a proposal for intra-EU investment protection is coming this fall? And secondly, can you comment on the report that this non-paper is considering such an building up an investment court, which is of course controversial, given that many people say you should go to normal courts, including investors should go to normal courts. What would the Commission would comment on this criticism. Thank you.
Thank you. After hearing your question, I'm not entirely sure whether it is Dan or Sonia. Let us see. Dan, I'm not sure we have something to comment at this stage, but go ahead.
No, indeed. Thanks, Eric. And hi, Hans. Thanks very much for your question. Absolutely. Look, I wouldn't have anything to comment on in terms of documents or non-papers or anything like that. But I will certainly check. And if there is anything, I'll get back to you after, of course, checking with colleagues.
Thank you. Hans, you have a follow-up?
Yes, could I ask on something completely different, if that's fine?
No, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Good try, but we have lots of people who raise their hands on different subjects. Is there another question on this issue of intra-EU investments? Oh, no. Okay, then I go back to Hamid with the question on Pakistan.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. This is Khalid Hamid Faruqi from Geo Television News, Pakistan. I would like to forward my question that though this question should be directed to FATF, but since European Commission and European Union's many countries are member of FATF, so FATF is still kept Pakistan in grey list and said that they are encouraged by Pakistani progress, but out of 26 points have been compliant now, only number 27th left. Is it not too much of a harsh punishment for Pakistan regarding counterterrorism financing and money laundering that the list almost have been completed, but they are kept for next period of review in grey list?
Okay, thank you very much. You had another question? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
Is directed to you particularly that European Parliament in fact passed resolution against Pakistan GSP plus status with 681 votes to 3, and this request have been made to European Commission and European Council to look at it and suspend Pakistan GSP plus status on the ground of discrimination against minorities and also misuse of blasphemy laws. So when this decision will be taken, that whether Pakistan would be suspended or GSP plus of Pakistan status of GSP plus would continue for Pakistan? Thank you.
Thank you. Your first question, I believe, is for Dan, and the second for Miriam. Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Eric. And hi, Ali. Thanks very much for your question. Indeed, I can answer on the first leg of your question when it comes to anti-money laundering. I would start by just saying that tackling anti-money laundering and countering terrorist financing is an absolute priority for the European Union and for the European Commission. You will have seen all the different actions that we have taken and measures that we have put in place over the past couple of years. We believe this is a really, really important priority both within the European Union but also globally. And that's why we continue to work with our international partners. That's why we continue to cooperate within the framework of FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, which, as you rightly point out, is an intergovernmental organization. And for that reason, of course, I'm not going to comment on the measures taken by FATF or by the different types of procedures that are in place there. All I would state very, very generally is that fighting money laundering is, of course, a big priority for us. We support international organizations like FATF in this fight. And of course, we would encourage all countries, including Pakistan, to focus their efforts on implementing any measures that have been set out by FATF to tackle this.
Thank you. And your second question related to Pakistan on GSP plus, I'll give the floor to Miriam.
Yes, thank you. We can only say that we take note of the EP resolution. As we are still analyzing the situation, we cannot comment further at this stage.
Okay, thank you. We are slightly running out of time, so I go back to Hans for his question on a completely unrelated subject. Go ahead, Hans.
Well, thank you, Eric. It's actually, I guess, for you. I'd just like to know whether you have a comment on the letter and the call from Renew Europe President or leader Damian Cholos for the Commission not to grant Hungary the recovery fund at this stage, unless Hungary at least gives access to Olaf to show who are all the beneficiaries of this recovery fund money in Hungary. So there's been this call to the Commission. I'd like to get a reaction from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, we are aware of the letter that you mentioned, and I believe that we have processes in place in terms of assessing the national recovery plans, which will ensure that the management and control systems that are put in place are fully adequate and ensure that the money goes to the beneficiaries that are foreseen by the actual actions of the plan. But I will give the floor to Marta in case she has anything to add on this.
Thank you very much. So indeed, as you know, we have received the Hungarian plan and we are now engaging in an in-depth assessment of this plan against the 11 criteria of the regulation. And as you know, perhaps one of the criteria of this regulation is that the plan must provide an adequate control and audit mechanism. And this is obviously something that we are looking at very carefully for all the plans we received so far. You can see in the assessments that we have already published last week on this issue. And of course, we will be very carefully assessing this point as well for Hungary as for all the other member states. And just to recall, the Recovery and Resilience Facility provides for a control framework that is tailor-made for this purpose. Member states will need to explain what are the arrangements they put in place in the Recovery and Resilience Plan. And the Commission will assess whether these control systems provide sufficient assurances. And of course, if the control system is deemed insufficient, the plan will be rejected. Of course, at this stage, we will not be able to comment on details on our assessment of the Hungarian plan, which is still ongoing. But let me just recall that the Commission will obviously check carefully the fact that the control systems are in place. And again, member states will need to collect data on the final recipients of the funds, the contractors, the subcontractors, and the beneficial owners, and make this available upon request. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Marta, take it easy when you go up those steps. Don't go too quickly. In your state, you have to take your time. Okay, I see. I will take one last question today from Mose before we move to the press conference.
Yes, thank you very much, Eric. It's a related question to the previous question, which concerned AML, that is anti-money laundering, and also CTF, counter-terrorist funding. As you perhaps know, the European Court of Auditors published, will publish today a report, its audit on anti-money laundering measures on EU level, especially about the transposition, or rather lack of transposition, of the current directive against money laundering. And you've probably seen the report, and what the court auditors complained about to criticize was the lack of a level playing field in EU member states. It's not clear from the Commission's reply whether the Commission intends, let's say, to propose a new law, regulation against money laundering in its action plan, which is published last year, or whether it somehow will accompany a kind of revised directive, as it said in the reply. Could you please clarify what is the Commission's position on this? Thank you.
Thank you. I believe this is a question for Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric, and hi, Mose. Mose, listen, I think you are a little bit ahead of yourself. As you said, the press release by the Court of Auditors is only going to be published this afternoon, so I'm not going to comment on something that's not yet public. Let me just make one or two very, very quick points on anti-money laundering. As I said, this is a key priority for us in the Commission. We are working to overhaul our rules, and the strength of our rules rely almost entirely on the effective implementation of those rules in member states. And that's why we do follow up. And if you look at any of our infringement cycles every month, you will see the measures that we are taking there against member states who have not properly implemented those rules. So effective implementation is central to our fight against money laundering, having common structures and increasing our cooperation between all the different anti-money laundering authorities within the European Union is key to all of that. And that's actually the whole point of our upcoming AML package, allowing us to better detect the illicit flows of money and everything like that, improving coordination and improving the work of our authorities within the European Union. So that's what I'd say by way of a general comment, and for a specific comment you can get back to me once the press release is published.
Thank you. I'll take one last question, in fact, from Mathieu.
Oui, bonjour. C'est un follow-up à la question sur les contrôles et la lettre de Renew. Une fois que vous vous êtes assuré que les systèmes de contrôle et d'audit sont en place, et qui est chargé de vérifier qu'ils fonctionnent conformément aux règles? Est-ce que ce sont les États membres ou est-ce que c'est une institution, un organe de l'UE? Merci.
Oui, merci Mathieu pour ta question. Donc effectivement, nous vérifions ex ante, bien sûr, que les systèmes sont mis en place. Donc ce que je viens de décrire à la question précédente, nous vérifierons que les mesures sont robustes, que nous considérons adéquates pour prévenir tout ce qui est risque de corruption, de fraude, de financement double, c'est-à-dire l'utilisation de fonds européens, plusieurs fonds européens pour par exemple financer le même projet. Mais ça ne signifie pas que ce contrôle s'arrête là, c'est-à-dire que nous allons également avoir des contrôles ex post. Donc là, par exemple, la Commission peut vérifier ce qu'on appelle on-the-spot checks, donc peut vérifier donc, sur place si effectivement les mesures ont bien été sont bien évidemment bien mises en œuvre, et donc la Commission peut vérifier effectivement si toutes ces mesures sont respectées, et également prendre des mesures pour corriger toute irrégularité ou même recouvrir des fonds qui auraient été donc distribués de façon non correcte. Donc effectivement tous ces contrôles à la fois ex ante ex post sont prévus dans le règlement. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Voilà, nous allons clore maintenant le rendez-vous de midi. Je vois que les commissaires piaffent d'impatience de monter sur scène. Donc nous leur cédons la parole et nous vous retrouverons demain pour un midday qui sera certainement court car nous avons beaucoup d'événements presse demain à vous proposer. Merci, bon après-midi.